Inter Miami destroyed by Monterrey 3-1 in Monterrey. A Tata Martino disaster class on full display. Messi nowhere to be seen. Those are the headlines right now from what we just saw. Inter Miami visiting Monterrey and losing in Messi's first appearance in Mexico. What was expected to be a really cool spectacle ended up being a complete trashing from this Mexican side, dude. Holy shit.
Good God, man. Yeah, no, it really was that bad. Yeah. Beautifully put. Disaster class for Inter Miami. I honestly think this is the first time we as a duo are talking about Inter Miami and Messi, and they actually lose
in a negative way,
in a very negative light here. Because, it was bad, man.
It's warranted, though. It's warranted, man.
Absolutely. Monterrey completely put on a show ultimately against Inter Miami. But when you look at the game over the course of the 90 minutes, it was very frantic for Miami the entire time. It didn't really look like they had set roles in the midfield. It honestly was just give it to Messi, give it to Luis Suarez, and let's figure it out from there. We've kind of seen that over-reliance in the past. What's weird is that it worked, but that's because you had role players like Robert Taylor, Benjamin Kramaski at the time, who knew what they had to do on the pitch. And from there was actual teamwork in that Inter Miami side in the past. But now, dude, it was all over the place. And you could see there was frustration from like the 10th minute for Inter Miami. Just a lot of pointing of fingers. Jordi Alba ultimately getting a red card too, two yellows. Yeah. It was just very strange and very frantic from Inter Miami, and I think it just doubled down on how poor of a performance this was for them.
Yeah, I'm frustrated with this Inter Miami side. Like we said, this is the first time we've actually spoken negatively about them, but it's deserved because, weirdly enough, this has been foreshadowed from what we saw them go through in those preseason games, man. Mm-hmm. This is the same Inter Miami that went to El Salvador and tied. The same Inter Miami that went to China, that went to all these different places and got mediocre results, bro, because of the chaotic nature of this team right now in this moment. I mean, seeing Drake Calendar's mistake, I think, embodies just what this team is going through right now, and the pieces that they have, it's just not good enough, man. Honestly, pretty close to semi-pro talent that's paired up alongside Busquets, Messi, and Jordi Alba. The pieces are missing, man. And if you look across the field from them, it's a team that has no pieces missing, with a team that's so complete in Monterrey, and has completely bounced back from their Liga disappointment this past season, looking really good now with Brandon Vasquez up top, Berterame as well, pulling off an incredible goal. Monterrey stood out to me as a really good team in this game, putting on a performance in front of a sold-out crowd today at home, and just showing out, man, against a team that ultimately was not able to compete against them in Inter Miami.
Yeah, and that is one point that I really do want to make. It's not even what was on the pitch, but the atmosphere at the Estadio BBVA was ridiculous, man. You pointed it out at the beginning of the game when we were watching it. You're like, dude, this is the most packed I've seen Monterrey Stadium. And I thought about it. I was like, I mean, I've seen it packed in semifinals, finals appearances, and Apertura Clausura, but only like 95%. There's always like a couple of seats open here and there, even in Liga MX playoffs. Today, I could not spot a single open seat. It was crazy. And I think it kind of makes me sad because that's the potential that Mexico has as a league. That crowd was electric, booing Messi every time he touched the ball. There was true hostility that you could feel through the TV screen. It was amazing to witness. And it just makes me wonder, like, if Mexico, the Liga MX as a league, could somehow repeat this without needing Messi. And I know that that's a tough ask. I understand that because Messi is the greatest player of all time. It's hard to repeat that without a player like that coming to your stadium. But if you could somehow incentivize the fans to come out, support your local club, like that'll just increase revenue for Mexico. You can attract more players like Sergio Canales, not just for Monterrey, but like for the rest of the league too. And I've just always thought Mexico has the infrastructure for a great league. The country's huge. There's so many different regions. There's so many different types of, variations of culture within Mexico that you could have something like the Premier League, but just over here
Yeah,
across the ocean. You know what I mean?
Man, we're missing out on consistency. That's the
That's
thing.
it.
Week
That's
in,
it.
week out, we can see a sold out crowd one week and then the next is completely empty.
Yeah.
Like that's what I really don't like about Mexico right now. And I would say the same about MLS too, because they show out when Messi's in attendance, but when he's not there, the stadiums can sometimes be empty too. But yes, it's just once again the Messi factor. Regardless of how badly Inter Miami is, he's going to pull in so many eyeballs into the game, and we saw it today. So that was always a great thing to see. But Monterrey going past Inter Miami in this game, looking very convincing now going on into the semifinal. But what I will say about Monterrey specifically is that I was looking at Fernando Ortiz, their coach, because he's gone through two really disappointing results in the past couple of years with what happened with him at America and then the disappointing Liguilla loss with Monterrey. Here he is once again, a quarterfinals matchup with a lot of stakes, a lot of pressure on him to deliver. And this team delivered fully, bro. I thought Arteaga was great today. Probably looked really, really good in my opinion. And there was a play where Messi tried to take him on and couldn't get past him and then fouled him in the process. Beautiful moment. Huge for the kid. Gallardo was solid. I thought the offensive players, already mentioned them, Berterame and Brandon Vasquez were really good as well. Monterrey looks very complete this time around.
I'd say the only thing that kind of frustrates me about this Monterrey side is they're so good offensively and they have such a drive going forward. I mean, you have Maxi Mesa, Brandon Vasquez, who's in incredible form, the veteran experience of Spaniard Sergio Canales, and then, of course, on the other side, you have Bertenam, who, by the way, scored a banger today. It's an incredible front four. I just wish they had better possession. That's it. I think if they could figure out their midfield, unfortunately, I don't think you're going to get that when you have Luis Romo. If they just had a better midfield, I think this team could win Liga MX. Like they would win this clausura. But for example, I will always give America that bigger chance, even Pachuca this year, because I think Monterrey ultimately just missed a little bit of true possessive ability in the midfield that's going to hurt them against much better teams. Because let's be honest, again, we already said it, Miami was pretty poor today, right? Yeah. But for Monterrey, they're so close to being a complete team in Mexico. I honestly think they're one class defensive midfielder away from being a complete 11.
I do think, I think the lack of possession, that's a great point. The lack of possession, the lack of control over the match. Miami couldn't break them, but a better team will, I think, if they try to approach the game in that way. Yeah. And the thing is, there are better teams in the semifinals that I think will do it. More specifically, I think America looks like one of the favorites to win this trophy now that Tigres got eliminated. It's Columbus Crew, America, Monterrey, and Pachuca now going into the semifinals. I'm looking straight at America as one of the favorites to lift the trophy here and call themselves CONCACAF Champions League winners, which would be insane. But more specifically, man, I just want to bring back an old narrative that if you've been watching The Give and Go, it's a narrative that I've been defending for a while and that I had to go head to head with during the Leagues Cup, because I remember one of my biggest takes during that tournament was just that I constantly just found myself saying, I understand what these results are with the MLS dominating that tournament, but I just can't fully give them their credit until I see how they perform in an away match in Mexico in a bit of a more even, more fair format, to be honest. And I think this is probably the best attempt at seeing that. It's the closest we're going to get in regards of fairness, in regards of, the same amount of teams being in this tournament and the top teams in both leagues going at it home and away. And we're seeing it, man. I feel like we're actually seeing it. My take ultimately was that when you look at the upper echelon of Mexican clubs compared to the upper echelon of MLS teams, I do still think there is a gap, although much, much more tighter. I do think there's a gap between the Americas, the Pachucas, the Monterreys, the Tigres of the world, and the top teams in MLS. I'm not trying to be biased of some Mexican bias or anything. I just truly think that those teams are still much more stacked because there's more money that's being funneled into those teams, and we're seeing that show itself in the big stage. And this tournament specifically, man, I think has absolutely showcased that, because we were a penalty shootout away from seeing 4 Liga MX teams in the semifinals. I believe that what we're seeing now is my take coming to full fruition, with 3 out of 4 semifinal teams being Liga MX sides.
I'll meet you halfway there. So the half part that I will meet you is that seeing Monterrey against Miami, seeing Pachuca, Jose Herediano, I know it's a Costa Rican team, but either way, hosting foreign teams. No. I'm with you. I'm actually now very pissed that the second edition of Leagues Cup still isn't going to be even a little bit in Mexico.
Yeah, man.
I'm very upset by that because we saw the atmosphere, especially considering what happened last year with an MLS team winning it. I feel like the Mexican people would show up hosting MLS teams. There would be no loss of money. If anything, the atmospheres would be even crazier given what's at stake. And I think it's a hugely missed opportunity. But I get even more pissed because I don't know if the Leagues Cup's ever going to be in Mexico, realistically.
Oh, no.
Just because of the money aspect, right?
Yeah.
Like, maybe it'd be in Mexico City, maybe it'd be in Monterrey, but even then, that'd still be a money thing, right? Because those are just two big powerhouses economically for Mexico. So it's just such a missed opportunity that...
It's like, do we need it then, bro? Do we need it? Or could we just shore up and better the CONCACAF Champions Cup? Because... that is the ultimate, more fair tournament in CONCACAF.
That would be cool. So, yeah, right. Everyone's involved, right? Even
Yeah.
Caribbean teams. I think to maximize that, this is actually interesting. To maximize that, CONCACAF should go back to some sort of group stage, right? Because straight knockouts is so quick. Like, you don't really get to see much ultimately, and the better games aren't really till the semifinals. But if you could just match up more American teams, more Mexican teams, and they face each other more often, which would happen in group stage, that would be really dope.
Yeah, I think it's just... and I think you mentioned this earlier because I did bring this up to you like last week, that the MLS teams that were qualified into the Champions Cup just aren't in good form right now. New England Revolution got manhandled by America as well.
Good Lord.
Whereas the Liga MX sides are on fire. But, I mean, as a Liga MX team supporter, I mean, all you can do is play the teams in front of you, and they've absolutely trashed them.
Yeah,
so,
and that's the second part of where I won't meet you, is that exact point. I agree. The Liga MX teams right now that are on the top tier of football teams in Mexico, they are so much better than their MLS counterparts. Way better. America, Monterrey, Pachuca are flying so high right now. But I think it's because, first off, really good offseason acquisitions. And then secondly, the core players that are there in all three of those teams have been there for a while. So they've been able to build a lot of chemistry, and then they've improved their squads with their offseason acquisitions. So I think that those three Mexican clubs in specific are just in really good form right now. Whereas the best MLS teams right now, when you really look at them, LAFC, dude, they've dropped big time. Truly. You compare the LAFC team form right now to what they used to be 2 years ago, it's not even the same, bro. You look at Cincinnati, who I thought was one of the best MLS teams up until like September of last year. Yes, they're, top of the table in the East, if you will, but they're barely scoring right now. And it's honestly just because the rest of their MLS opponents aren't up to par. New England's not as good as they used to be. New York City, while they were champions a couple of years ago, they're really nowhere to be found in form. You have a really frustrated Inter Miami as your next best bet, bro. Like, a lot of the MLS teams that were very good over the last 3 years just aren't good anymore. So I think that's also why you're seeing 3 Liga MX teams in the semifinals of CONCACAF Champions League. It's just an ebb and flow, and
but that's a criticism, man. That's a criticism I have of MLS, is that the top teams don't maintain the same level of consistency as Liga MX sides. Liga MX sides, when they're going through a golden era, a golden generation, it can last 2 to 3 years. Atlas, León, Chivas, America, Monterrey. Whereas with MLS, dude, it ebbs and flows. It goes up and down so often, bro. I think with the exception of maybe LAFC, perhaps. I remember the Toronto team.
Yeah, dude.
They were on a really good high, and they almost became the first team in MLS to lift the CONCACAF Champions Cup, and they lost to Chivas because they ultimately weren't able to reach that max level once again. And even Columbus Crew, who we just saw lift the trophy a few months ago, is already, I would say, a weaker version of what they were during their playoff run a few months ago, man. And so it's disappointing to me that MLS still hasn't truly figured out that aspect of longevity when it comes to maintaining a high level of excellence in football. And that's something that Liga MX, I think, deserves credit for. And that's why I'm going all in on them being the better league in terms of top teams, because that's what we've been seeing this tournament.
Yeah. And that is a criticism that you can make about the MLS as a whole. I don't think you can argue against the point that you just made, man, because, remember Austin FC? We went to the conference finals literally, 2 years ago, and now we're
Yeah.
garbage.
Yeah.
We were literal garbage. And not just this year, last year, the year after we went to the conference finals, we were, bottom of the table essentially. Like, I agree, the volatility that exists within the MLS, not even just with the lower teams, but the big market teams like LAFC, but also LA Galaxy, bro. Like, they're barely getting back on it, I agree. It's something you can really complain about when it comes to the MLS. And I think it's just, yeah, I mean, it's the finances, right? It's the way that Don Garber has wanted to build this league. It's why there's so many teams, right? I mean, there's always going to be some sort of dilution when it comes to the talent that's on display. So, yeah, I mean, you could write a dissertation on the economics and infrastructure of the MLS and why it's kind of holding it back. But you could also say, why the MLS has flourished so well.
It's a better development league for sure. By far,
that's the problem.
Bro.
Yeah.
Like, and I give them credit for that's the league to go through. If you want to grow your talent and export players, that's the place to go by far, bro. By far. But you're not gonna meet me all the way then? What's it going to take?
That's the thing, halfway. That's because there are pros to the way the MLS does it, but you do get these really down years where there really isn't any team playing good football.
Yeah. Well, hey, maybe Columbus Crew proves us wrong, man. They're the last remaining team.
And they're decent.
If they win
still
this,
pretty good.
I might have to eat my words, bro, if they win this. Still beating out 3 Liga MX sides. But no, I have America winning. I'm going to say right now, I have America.
I'll go with you, too. I think America is the best team in the Americas right now.
Oh, that's bold.
Okay, I guess I
You
meant
talking about
North America. Let me repeat that. My bad. I think America is the best team in North America in CONCACAF, and it can get a little close when you have teams like Monterrey and Pachuca, but I just think from back to front, America is a near perfect squad. So I think it'd be tough to beat them.